Welcome to this TeachMeet on how I can prepare for my ECT induction. My name is Natisha and I'll be presenting alongside my colleague Ashley today, and we'll be covering everything that you need to know about your ECT induction. So this is a really exciting TeachMeet. We've been really looking forward to presenting this one with you guys because it's going to be covering so many different things, and also to just help you prepare for September and just make that transition from being a trainee into an ECT just that little bit easier. So let's talk about what this event is going to cover. So we're going to be covering the early career framework, what to expect during your first term, getting to know your new school and class, making the most of your summer break, and strategies for a work-life balance. And we'll also be talking about how you can use AI to help with your workload as well. So this session, we expect it to last around 40 minutes, and there'll be some time at the end for any questions you may have, but feel free to drop them in the chat whilst we're presenting if there's anything that you would like answered. We will also have a reflections document shared throughout the session as well, and that will contain some links for resources, blogs, and landing pages. So we might ask for your thoughts and ideas at certain points in the session, so feel free to type a response in the chat if you'd like to answer, but if you'd rather not speak on camera, that's absolutely fine, just pop it in the chat. So just a little bit about me. So my name is Natisha. I've been a teacher for 7 years, and throughout my time in school I've taught throughout Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, and I spent 3 years in Year 6. I actually had my first year of teaching was actually in Year 6, and then I spent another 3 years in Year 6. So I also have some experience in supply teaching as well. So I'm part of the trainee teachers and ECTs team at Twinkl. I create videos for our YouTube channel, and I support trainee teachers and ECTs on our Facebook group. So you may have seen me around a little bit. And I also run all of our CPD sessions as well. So our main goal is to provide you with all the support, advice, and guidance that you need to make a flying start into your career in teaching.
And hello, my name is Ashley. I'm also a former primary school teacher. So I worked mostly in Year 4 and Year 5, but I've also got a background as a supply teacher and a one-to-one learning support assistant. So I too work in the trainee and ECT team at Twinkl. I co-host our podcast, which you should give a listen to because it is great. I lead the TikTok channel, and I create the resources that are specific to trainees and ECTs. And I just want to be here to help you guys feel confident moving into the next step from a trainee to an ECT.
So I'm going to get started with what the early career framework is. So what it basically is a framework of standards to help early career teachers succeed at the start of their careers. So previously, you may have heard this as the ECT. ECT was actually known as an NQT, a newly qualified teacher. So that usually lasted just 1 year, but now the ECT induction is 2 years. So how will ECTs be assessed using the early career framework? So as an ECT, you'll be assessed against the teacher's standards and your ability to meet them consistently over a sustained period. So unfortunately, the ECT induction cannot be repeated. So once you start your ECT induction, you have 2 years to complete it. And that's basically what your guys are going to be starting in September, which is very exciting. So let's now have a look at how you can have a successful ECT induction. So the first things first is just to ensure that you're familiar with the teacher standards and reflect on your practice frequently. So as a trainee, you must have been kept aware of the teacher standards and what they are. So it's basically going to be going through those again throughout your ECT induction. So have a think about which standards do you feel the most confident with, which standards do you feel are areas for improvement. These are all things that you can talk to your mentor about. You can also seek guidance from your mentor on how to improve on the things you might feel that you lacked a bit of confidence in throughout your training year. Also, speaking of mentors, it's really important to listen very carefully to the feedback that your mentor or other members of staff give you and act on their suggestions. They're very experienced and they will be giving you some feedback based on what they think you can improve on and kind of, you know, the positive things as well. So it's good to kind of just take in what they tell you and kind of act on it. Also, one thing that I wish I did more when I was in my first few years of teaching is ask for help, because if you need help, this is your time to develop as a teacher. So seek guidance wherever you feel is necessary. And you can only do that by identifying the areas that you need support with. Try not to put too much pressure on yourself. Another thing that I wish I did, I I wish I didn't put as much pressure on myself, because although you have achieved QTS, which congratulations for, you are still very early on in your career and there's so much to learn still. So there may be times where you feel out of your depth, or you might feel that you're not good enough, but no one is expecting you to be perfect. So just try and remember that.
Okay, so what we wanted to do is to give you some practical sort of ideas of what you're going to be moving into as an ECT. So what it's going to be like on a daily basis. So you are going to have an increase in your teaching hours, and that might seem really obvious, but it can be a bit of a jump. So I always try and suggest to have like a nice calm weekend at the end of your first week, because you might be quite tired considering you've had a bit of a jump. So as an early career teacher, you are going to be required to teach more hours than you did in your training, although through your training, you will know that it's steadily increased anyway. You'll be entitled to PPA time like you did in your teacher training, and it's around about 10%, which normally works out as about one afternoon a week, something like that, but it depends on how your school will structure it. Sometimes you might have it in the morning, you might have it in the afternoon, or you might have it in some schools where you have, say, an hour every day and it makes up that time. So however your school structures it, you will be still having PPA time to help you with your planning, your preparation and your assessment. You will have your own classroom unless you are job sharing, and that's the sort of position that you've taken on and you're going to be sharing a classroom with a teacher. You will have your own classroom, and as exciting as that can be, it can also be a little bit of a daunting prospect to have that responsibility for a classroom. But you're going to be able to have the freedom to design your own displays, set the tables however you want, choose your own seating plans and all of those different things. So that is going to be a difference from your training year where you were in someone else's class to an ECT. You will then be responsible and have ownership over that. You will be having regular meetings with your mentor. This is the point where I really want to hammer home that you need to know who your mentor is. So hopefully you should know before you start the position. If you don't know who your mentor is by the end of the first week, then please go and ask. It is incredibly important that you know who your mentor is and that they are supporting you through your ECT induction. It is one of your entitlements. So you should be getting regular mentoring sessions. Now, this will be a conversation that you have with your mentor. They may be quite frequent at the beginning. You then might decide to have them on a 2-weekly basis or a monthly basis, but that is something that you would discuss with your mentor, and it is a chance for you to ask for support, ask for help, ask for advice, and just arrange any sort of training or observations that you can be doing and moving forward. You should also be able to rely on your colleagues. Again, it does depend on how your school is structured. I've worked in a 4-form school where we were based in year groups and we stuck to your year groups, but I've also worked in a 1-form school where we worked in key stages. So I sort of had a year partner. I was in year 4 and they were in year 3, and we worked together on a basis that way. So you should have colleagues that you can go to and ask for advice for. It just might look different in each of your schools, however they are structured. You will, talking about your mentor, you will also be having frequent training sessions that align with the early career framework. So this will be to develop your teaching practice and build on your knowledge. So it will be similar to your training year, but if you like Matisha was saying about if there's certain standards that you want to be improving on, you will hopefully be able to get some training, some focus training on those areas or observations that you can go in and look at another colleague and see how they do it. So for example, you might need phonics and you might go to a phonics training or behavior management, or to see how a colleague manages transitions in their classroom. So hopefully you'll be getting lots of opportunities for training. You will also, as an ECT, be classed as just a general member of staff. So you may have extra responsibilities. You may have a club that you run. You may be involved in the Christmas or summer fairs. There'll be assemblies. There might be performances. So there's all of those other things that you will be having on top of your normal workload, such as school trips as well. You'll be responsible or hopefully involved in the process of organising those. And the last one for this slide is the relationships with parents, carers and guardians. So hopefully you have had a certain amount of experience of that on your training year. But as an ECT, it is a bit of a jump to then be solely responsible for those conversations. And it might be quite daunting at the thought of having to ring up a parent when you are the class teacher to begin with, but I promise it does become second nature and you do become more natural at it. But that is something that is going to be different than your training year, where you might have been a supporting role or listening into the conversation. You will now be having that conversation. So yeah, those are the differences between your training year and your ECT year. If you do have any questions, please pop them in and we'll try and answer them for you.
Right, so let's now talk about getting to know your new school and class. So if you haven't already found out who your new class is, I'm sure you will be very, very soon. It's a very exciting time and you're probably thinking in your mind, oh gosh, what am I going to do when I go through that transition day or that transition week or when I meet them in September? So we've come up with a few tips that we've kind of done in our time of teaching, and yeah, we want to share them with you. So just thinking about when you're meeting a new class for the first time as an ECT, it can give you so many emotions. You're excited, you're nervous, you might be feeling a little bit like, oh, how do I introduce myself, or that sort of thing. So excitement about the year ahead, it can battle with nerves about classroom management, and you also want to make a good impression. So that kind of finding that balance. So the first thing you could do is just focus on creating a welcoming environment. So there's so many ways that you can do this. You can do this if you're coming in for a transition week. It might be just how you present yourself, or maybe how you seat the children. Do you put them, are they going to be on the carpet straight away? Are they going to go to their table? You know, there's all these things that you can think about. And remember, it's your class. You can do it in any way that you wish. You can plan engaging activities that get pupils talking and interacting, and you can prioritize getting to know them as individuals. So you can play games with them, or maybe you can have kind of a all about me session. Like I always used to do kind of like a icebreaker sort of activity, was kind of like 2 truths and a lie. So I would come up with, you know, like a crazy lie, and it would make them really laugh, and like we would kind of, you know, we would kind of get to know each other in that way. And remember as well, although you're probably feeling quite anxious, the children are probably feeling quite anxious as well to meet you as their new teacher. So just remember that too. You're probably not the only anxious one in the room. And also, like, a good way of thinking about it is when you're fostering a sense of community in your classroom and communication from the start, you're kind of setting the stage of how their first impressions of you and how it's kind of going to go on, like as time goes on throughout the year. So it's a really good way to kind of set the bar of what it's going to be like. But of course, don't worry too much if it is a little bit stressful, or maybe you're like, oh, your behavior management might be a little bit rocky. Don't worry about that, because those are all things that you can develop come September as well. So I made a list of a few things that you can get ready behind the scenes, because especially on Facebook, there was a lot of questions that came in of what can I do now to prepare for September, because some of you might not have access to your classrooms just yet. So I came up with a few things that you could do now. So think about the layout of your classroom. So for example, how you might want the tables organized. Like, definitely check with your school first if they have a certain policy in place of how they like the tables to be. But are you thinking of having kind of like in 2s, maybe groups, that you can kind of organize it, maybe like you can even draw it out and kind of just have different ideas of what you think what might work for your class. Obviously, when it comes to September, you might find that, oh, this doesn't work, actually, I might need to move things around. So that's absolutely fine. At least you have like a rough idea in your mind. Also, you can think about what display boards you might want to have in your classroom. So again, check with your school, because they might have specific display boards that you need to have, but you might have like a maths working wall or a English working wall. You might have a topic wall. You could have, like a class information. You might have a class rules board. Like, there's so many different ways that you can personalize your classroom to the way that you want it as a teacher. So there's kind of things that you can think about. One thing that I did as well is I just had like a copy of a class list, because you just never know when you're going to need it. So I just had quite a few of those. I was just preparing it, making sure that I was familiar with the children's names. You can also think about classroom resources. You can actually start getting these things ready if you can, like labels for trays. You can have your visual timetable. You can print out and laminate, have that ready, because you'll probably use it for all the years that you're teaching as you keep going throughout the years. Anything you might want for display. So for example, when I mentioned before, like maths working wall, you might just want the banner for maths ready, so you can put it up when your classroom is ready and your walls are all backed. Another thing that you could do is familiarize with yourself with the school scheme of work to inform your planning. So for example, if there's a certain phonics scheme that they follow, or maybe, any sort of scheme that they follow, just make sure you're familiar with it, because it might not be necessarily what you used when you were training. Another thing is ensure that you're familiar with your school's policies. So their safeguarding policy, their behaviour policy, those kind of things you can read up on now. They're probably going to be accessible for you. You could just contact someone in the school and they'll give it to you for sure. So just make sure you're familiar with it. It will just make life a lot easier come September. And the last thing is a planner. So we would definitely recommend that you get a planner just to remain organised. We actually have a really good one, the trainee teachers and ECT's planner. It's amazing. It's got like all the teacher standards in there. It's got literally like day by day, like kind of to-do lists. It's got advice in there. That's a really good one. So if you're interested, then just go on our social channels, because we've got a link for you to purchase that on there.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the summer break. So have you guys already, that's just a quick question, have you guys already finished your teacher training year, or have you still got a little bit to go? If you could just let me know where you're at. Have you got a couple of weeks left? Where are you? Because some of you may be finished. Brilliant. That's amazing. So you are technically in your summer break now. So I just wanted to let you know a few ways that you can make the most. Finish but still teach my class to the end of the year. Lovely. Natalie, that's a fantastic experience. Well done for getting that sorted. Very good. But everyone so far, apart from Natalie that I can see, are on your summer break. So yeah, we're just going to talk about how you can make the most of it. And as obvious as it is, and you're probably not wanting to listen to this, you probably want to get ready and get sorted. The best thing that you can do for now during this break is to rest your body and your mind. Thank you for not doing so tonight and joining this Teach Me. But after this, you should rest your body and rest your mind, because it has been a long slog. The teacher training year is intense, so congratulations to you all for completing it, but you need a rest. So make sure that you are spending time with your family and friends. Hopefully, if you've got the financial capability, you can get away and you can go on holiday or have a relax, even if it's, you know, camping or whatever you can do, or just sitting in front of the TV and having a bit of a binge watching session, but just relax, take your mind off work. Once you've sort of got that out of your system, you can start to do a few of the things that Matisha mentioned and start to get a little bit organised with how you want to prepare. And again, you could be different. You might prefer to get organised now and rest later, or you might be like what I was like, where I rested and then got organised. It's whatever suits you. It's whatever works for you. There's lots of us in this chat. We're all probably going to do it in slightly different ways. So whatever feels right for you. If your mind is racing and you know that you're not going to be able to relax before you get organised, then get organised. If you're absolutely exhausted at this point, then rest, and then you've got lots of weeks to get prepared. Once you want to, though, you can start to do really small little things to get yourself prepared. So one of the things that I always used to do is whatever the class text was, I would read it or watch a film or do something to know what I'm going to be teaching, basically. One year I taught Alice in Wonderland, so I read the book and I watched both films. I think there's 2 films. I watched films anyway, just so that I can absorb it. I know what I'm going to be teaching. I know what happens in the story. And then when I'm then planning my lessons, I can read the book in small little snippets of what I need to do, but I know the overall story. And if you like reading like I do, it doesn't feel like work, and it's just a nice way to get ahead. If you've got any children in your class that you know have got EHCPs or IEPs, so that's anyone that you need to be making some extra things, doing extra things, maybe visual timetables, they might need lessons in short chunks, they might need regular brain breaks, anything that is on those IEPs. You might want to be reading them just so you understand what's going to be expected and what your day-to-day is going to be looking like. Again, with that, you might want to read any handover documents. If the teacher who taught them this year has compiled anything, you might want to read that just to get to know the children before you teach them in September. And if they've got any reports that you have access to, you might want to read those. And finally, just a little bit of self-promotion. We do have a podcast that covers a wide range of topics for teaching. If you want to give that a listen whilst you, I don't know, doing the dishes or getting ready or whatever, that can be a great way to sort of keep your mind in it, but not too intensive.
So let's talk about strategies for a work-life balance. So it's not new information that it can be quite tricky for teachers to have a work-life balance. So we want to start you off on the best footing, and we want you to try and develop a work-life balance from the get-go. Okay, so what you need to try and remember, and I know it's really hard because we all want to kind of strive to be the best teacher we possibly can be, but you do need to remember that you're also a person as well, because it is quite easy to forget about that. And remember what makes you you, and you need to dedicate time to what you love to do. So there are probably hobbies that you have that you really, really enjoy, and teaching can be very time consuming. It can take up a lot of your time if you can't get that balance. So it's just kind of trying to ensure that if you have a hobby like you enjoy, I don't know, like maybe reading or going to the gym or, you know, cooking or something, that you still try and maintain those small things whilst teaching as well, because, you know, that's what brings you happiness. It's important to create boundaries and also be disciplined with yourself. So at the beginning, it is hard. Once you're trying to develop that kind of routine of marking and planning and teaching and having a personal life, it is hard to create that boundary. But, you know, if you can just tell yourself, you know what, on the weekend or on a Saturday evening, I'm going to spend that time with my family. And, you know, work is work. I can do that on Sunday. Wouldn't recommend on the weekend if you can, but, you know, on after school or something like that, just try and dedicate some time for you and try and create that boundary for yourself. Learn to be kind to yourself. That's so important because, again, like I mentioned before, you want to be the best teacher you possibly can be. And sometimes you can just forget to look after yourself. So just keeping those things at the back of your mind. Try and stay organized. So when you start teaching, there's a lot that's going to come on your plate. And it's just like, you know, you need to think about kind of your planning, your marking, then you might have other things that are thrown in your plate as well, like when you go into meetings and kind of from your mentor and observations, all of these things are going to be, you know, going left, right and center. So just try and stay organized, try and find a system that works for you. And also, again, with the planner, that really helps as well, just to keep your mind organized. That's what I found really helps, having like a diary of some sort. Remember that it's okay to say no and you cannot do it all. Again, from personal experience, I really struggled with this. I was very much a people pleaser and I would try and just do everything and I would end up feeling quite overwhelmed and quite burnt out. But remember, if you are at your max, you are at your max and you cannot take any more work on, it's okay to say no. Learn to prioritize as well. If you've got 3 or 4 quite important jobs, think about what needs to be done first and make sure you get that done first. And the other things can wait. So just try and, again, at the beginning, it might be tricky, but, you know, as time goes on, you will get better at prioritizing at what's the most important. And then also remember that not everything has to be perfect. I'll give you an example. It was World Book Day and we needed to decorate our classroom doors, and I thought it would be a good idea for me to stay back after school and draw the BFG on like massive sugar paper. It was highly unnecessary. I really didn't need to do it, but I did that and I was exhausted for the whole week because I decided to do it on a Monday. So, you know, just think about not everything has to be perfect. Although you might want your display to be the best looking one in the entire school, it doesn't mean that it has to be. Okay, so just think about yourself and think about what's the best thing for you and your well-being. I hope that all makes sense. If there's anything that needs clarifying, of course, just drop it in the chat and I'll be more than happy to clarify.
Okay, so a huge topic at the moment is AI, and we wanted to talk about it and let you know how it can help you in your ECT year and how it can be really, really useful, especially with what Matisha's just been saying about work-life balance. It can be a fantastic tool to reduce your workload and get things done quicker. But I do want to preface that by saying that you as the teacher, you might not feel it now, but you as a teacher will know those children the best. It might take you a little bit to get to know them completely, but AI should not replace you or your expertise. You are the teacher. So when it comes to knowing your class and knowing what they need, you are going to be the expert. Okay, so I just want to start that off first. But Now we'll move on to how AI can help you. So we have a system called Ari AI. Sorry, I fumbled over my words there. And there is going to be a link to it. And it is a AI that's been developed by Twinkl, and it's there to specifically help you with lots of little jobs as a teacher. So the first ones that we've looked at are teaching tool support. So you can use them to create like support resources for your class. So it could be like matching activities or sentence scramblers or vocabulary sheets. Those are the sort of tasks that I used to find took so much longer than I would have thought. I used to remember when I was tired, my imagination wasn't there, sentence scramblers or creating sentences, it used to go out of my mind, and I could be sat there just with writer's block and it could take me ages. This is where AI could come in. You can put in what your topic's going to be about, and it can create those supporting documents for you really quickly, and you can concentrate on other important jobs. It can also be used to help you with your planning and assessment. So we do have a report writer, which helps you to write reports really, really quickly and can get rid of the workload of that. You input the data and what you want to say about each child, and it generates a report. It is fantastic. It can also help you with lesson planning. I wouldn't recommend you use it to create the entire lesson plan, but it can be a good tool to help you think of starters to use or activities to do, or it can even be used as a waggle of this is a great lesson plan, what can you magpie from it? I just wouldn't replace writing the lesson plans yourself. I know that they do take so long to do, but it is a skill that you want to continue to develop as a teacher. You don't want to replace it with AI, but it also can be great to help you with PowerPoints and quizzes and different things like that. And also, it is fantastic for what I used to call wet play activities. You can generate colouring sheets, crosswords, word searches, anything like that that can be linked to your topic of choice, whatever you're teaching, and it just keeps the children absorbed in that knowledge that you're trying to give them. It can either be an activity for as soon as they walk in the door, they can be sitting and doing a word search about the Romans, or you could have a wet play colouring sheets that are all about the Vikings, for example, and they can be colouring in those. So those are just great little ways that the AI can help you reduce workload, get rid of those little tiny jobs so that you can concentrate and focus on the main parts. So the last little thing from me really is going to be the top tips for us, because I know that we've been talking a lot, but I just want to talk to you about your ECT year as a whole. You might be sitting there quite nervous, quite anxious about how you're going to cope and how you're going to do, but we just wanted to talk about our tips. So the first one is to be enthusiastic but clear with your boundaries. There is a very common phrase out there about not smiling until December. I could never do that. I was always I tried to be an energetic, exuberant teacher, and with that came, I wanted to build relationships straight away. I wanted to be friendly and personable. So I was never the stern, this is the boundary, this is it. But you do it in different ways, whatever is comfortable for you. But you make sure that you are establishing your boundaries and that you are being consistent with them. The children will try and test boundaries to see what they can get away with. If you remain firm and consistent with them, then your behaviour management will improve, but also your enjoyment and the children's enjoyment of just the general class. So accept that failure is a part of teaching, regardless of how experienced any teacher is in any school. They will fail at certain things, or they will miss the mark, or they will make mistakes. It is just the way of the world, unfortunately. But as at the beginning of your career, you might be really hard on yourself. You might aim for that perfection that Matisha was talking about. But if you can accept that failure is a part of it and it is a learning process, and if you get something wrong, as long as you adapt and change and do something differently next time, that's a learning point, and that's amazing. Remember your why. It is a little bit of a cliche statement to say, but on those tough days where everything's gone wrong, or you're just, you're feeling exhausted, remember why you love teaching, and also try and take the positives, because no matter how bad your day may feel like it's gone, there's going to be certain positives. You might have had a lovely conversation with a child. They might have brought you some work and it was really great. Or you might have just, you know, sat down with a cup of coffee and had a chat with a colleague at break time and it's been a lovely time. Don't take those little positives and remember why you wanted to get into teaching in the first place, and hopefully those bad days won't seem as bad. Also, don't reinvent the wheel. During your teacher training, I know that there's a heavy focus on completely writing your lesson plans from start to finish, and it's really detailed and you've got to put all of the information in there all the time. As an ECT and you're in induction, that sort of lessens a little bit. You're still probably going to have to be writing lesson plans, or at least having a plan out there, depends on how your school works it. But don't reinvent it. If there are something on your school system that works, you can magpie it, take it, adapt it to your class and the children in your class to make sure that it is going to be okay for them and relevant to them. But if there are activities that you know that has worked before, use them again, reuse them. Look at what your year partner is doing, work together. Don't make work for yourself, because a teacher to-do list, I'm sure you know from your teacher training, it feels never ending, so you don't want to add things to it as well. And then, like Matisha says, I'm not going to repeat it again and go through it, but do things for you. Make sure that you're filling your cup so that you can pour into others, because if you're empty and you've got nothing, you've done nothing that makes you happy, that you enjoy, you're going to struggle to be that energetic teacher, that exuberant teacher, enthusiasm, if you're just feeling exhausted and burnt out. So just make sure that you're taking time for yourself outside of school.
Right, thanks, Ash. So the last thing I kind of wanted to end on is a new thing that's come up at the moment, which is Elevate Supply. So if you are someone who hasn't secured a job for September just yet, or you know someone who hasn't secured a job for September, then Elevate Supply is a good way to get into supply teaching. So it's just to summarize quickly, we're not going to go into too much detail because we are holding a session on the 24th of July that talks about this in a lot more detail. But what it does, it connects supply teachers with schools directly and allows you to set up your own rates with no high agency fees. So it offers transparency in job opportunities, wages, pricing, and processes to make find the right match even easier. So if you are someone who is looking for a role for September, but you haven't quite secured a position to carry out your ECT induction, or you might just be looking at doing short-term supply, or maybe you just know somebody who is in this position, then feel free to attend this live CPD session, really, where we'll be talking about long-term supply, short-term supply, completing your ECT induction on supply, and also just, you know, we will cover a lot of different things in this session related to supply teaching as an ECT. So if you're new to teaching or just new to supply in general, it will be an amazing session to come to. So I'm just going to drop the link to that in the chat. So if you would like to attend, just fill in the Google form and we'll be more than happy to see you there in a few weeks.